It was around this time 4 years ago that I was at the Republican National Convention in Cleveland, Ohio, and I remember asking then Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn about something I had seen all over the convention that struck me about Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton.
When you see shirts around here or buttons that use the word BITCH to describe her, the degree of that's like Trump shirts, Trump that, does that, how do you feel about that? I feel like
Have you read my Twitter feed or my Facebook page? It kind of comes with the territory, and you just have to shake it off. Great Taylor Swift song by that title. You should go listen to that.
So you sort of feel like being a woman in the public sphere comes with that kind of invective,
you wouldn't
whatever
believe
side.
what all I've been called and what's been said to me in my career, whether it was in the private sector or in the public sector. Go read my Twitter feed.
Then Congresswoman Blackburn clearly did not really have a problem with it, but the anti-Hillary Clinton merchandise available at the Republican convention everywhere you went was truly horrifying and disgusting. Things like T-shirts with cartoons showing Hillary Clinton being sexually assaulted. It's why I found this observation from Washington Post reporter Dave Weigel about the Trump rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma on Saturday so interesting. Quote, vendors sold almost no merchandise that mentioned Joe Biden specifically. Almost nothing mentioning the president's opponent this time around. No obscene T-shirts with Joe on them. No Biden for prison stickers. You know what was available? Hillary Clinton merch. In 2020, 4 years later, they are still selling all the anti-Hillary Clinton stuff. So what if that simple observation is the key to the fundamental structure of this entire presidential election right now? That after 8 years of a black president and the first female major party in the presidential nominee, Donald Trump's particular kind of culture war just is not working against an old white man named Joe Biden. We might be seeing that reflected in the polling. A new national poll out today has Joe Biden up by a staggering 14 points. And while Trump is losing among all the groups you would expect him to, he's losing among women and among black voters, he's also losing support among traditionally Republican-leaning groups like white seniors. But it is weird just how much Donald Trump appears to want to run against Hillary Clinton or run against President Barack Obama in the year 2020. It's particularly weird given that Obama, for instance, is one of the most popular politicians in America. He is also not running this year. But there is a sort of method that Trump is reaching for here, right? Because he knows his own political rise was a product of a certain kind of white male backlash, and he is struggling to reproduce that while running against Joe Biden. Adam Serwer writes this week in The Atlantic, these kind of poll numbers that we're seeing are not an accident. Quote, after 12 years of feasting on white identity politics with a black man and a woman as its preeminent villains, the Republican Party is struggling to run its Obama-era culture war playbook against an old, moderate white guy. And Adam Serwer, who wrote that great piece, joins me now. I love this essay. It sort of captured a lot of things that I've been thinking inchoately. What's the thesis here? What's your argument about what problem Joe Biden has presented Donald Trump politically?
Well, the Republican Party hasn't run against just a regular, moderate white guy in 16 years, or 12 years. They've been running against Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton, ginning up these sort of weird, bizarre conspiracies that wouldn't stick to other people because, or that wouldn't stick to someone like Joe Biden because people give him the benefit of the doubt because he's a white guy. It sucks. It's just sort of the way that, these underlying conceptions of race and gender shape our subconscious preferences as a country. But it's something that is giving Biden an advantage here over the last Democratic candidate who ran. When you talk about something as visceral as like the T-shirts, Republicans can't quite convince themselves that a Joe Biden presidency would be the apocalypse in the same way that they were saying that a Hillary Clinton they were comparing Hillary Clinton's potential presidency to passengers storming a hijacked plane on 9/11. It's just that sense of complete apocalypse is just not there in the same way it was with Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama.
It's such a good point. And there's a moment in the Tulsa rally that was really interesting where you can see this in Trump himself even having a hard time selling it, because the Trump argument that he has sold is that don't look at Joe Biden. He's just a puppet for these other shadowy characters that are, of course, very heavily coded along all these cultural war lines. But listen to what he says about Biden here.
Joe Biden is not the leader of his party. Joe Biden is a helpless puppet of the radical left. And he's not radical left. I don't think he knows what he is anymore. But he was never radical left.
Like, he was never radical left. Like, he can't bring himself to sell Joe Biden as radical left.
He can't even do it. I mean, this is what's so amusing about it, is that in part what's hampering the president here is his own prejudices. He can't bring himself. He doesn't want to run against Joe Biden. Yes. Joe Biden doesn't scare him. He wants to run against the Squad, or he wants to run against Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama. He wants a non-white or female villain to run against because he knows that that's something he can use to gin up his supporters into the kind of froth that he needs to have them turn out in large numbers. And Biden, and I have to say, this was something that a lot of the African-American voters in the South anticipated when they chose Biden, was that he would be less threatening to Trump's base in particular. Yeah. He was a kind of olive branch in the culture war. Like, we understand you guys are freaking out about some stuff that is not that has to do with this incredible inversion of power that happened over the last 8 years, where we temporarily had one black president. And so we're going to try to bring the temperature down a little bit. And it seems to have been correct, at least against this particular candidate. I mean, I have to emphasize here, Trump only has one kind of politics that he knows how to do. So against a different Republican, I'm not sure that this would be happening the way that it's happening. But Trump is particularly inflexible. He is particularly ideological when it comes to race and gender. And he finds it very difficult to change tactics.